Rodger Friedman, you are one of my favorite guests, one of the most favorite people I've had on this show. Intelligent as you are, charismatic. I really enjoyed our conversation before, and we agreed, which the last time was before the election. At the next time, that after the election, we would meet up again. And it's been several months. There's not much, I guess, for us to talk about now that hasn't already been. I mean, what a charade, though. What a big pulling the wool over the country's eyes of somebody that had cognitive issues. There's so many examples of that. It just some people just double down and so tribal and just this is the hill I'm going to die on and all of that. But so, of course, this is May now. Of course, we're talking about November. I just want to go back for a minute. And for the people that may not think that there was a coup that happened, a coup d'etat, just please try to think about the fact that, after this last debate that Biden had with Trump, within the next couple of weeks, some reporters asking him, so are you ready for another 4 years? You feel like you can take it on, you can handle it? And he's like, he's singing from the same song sheet as Gavin Newsom. I'm the best I've ever been. Yeah, I'm ready. I'm robust. Age is my superpower, all this stuff. So he's ready to go. He's ready and raring.
You know,
Okay.
us Americans, I find this profoundly disturbing. And all we wanted was a simple truth.
Right.
Just tell us the truth. Don't lie to us. No subterfuge. Don't pull the wool over our head. With Pelosi and Harris and Nadler and Schiff and Schumer and Waters and all of them
Yeah.
just lying out of the side of their mouth. Everything's fine. Nothing to see here. Move along.
Right. Right.
Guess what? There was plenty to see, but the media helped them pull the wool over everyone's eyes.
Right. I mean, just everybody, come on, we're gonna spread this lie and we're gonna cover up until after that debate, and then we saw some Democrats in Congress and other people in the media going, he's having problems because I guess their bottom line is they wanted their side to win. He was a puppet in doing what they told him anyway. But we at least got to make sure the puppet wins,
Yeah,
or none of us win.
they said everything that they could possibly say,
Yeah,
whether it was the truth or not. The
yeah,
truth got damaged beyond repair. Now books are coming out where they're saying, well, he should have been in a wheelchair. We shouldn't have let him run at all. And all
right.
of his minders are speaking out.
Yeah, and then just what I've been thinking about the most, like over the last month, is the fact that, well, to go back to what I was saying, he said he's ready to go and all of this, and he's fine. And then about 2 weeks later or less, he resigns. There's a resignation letter that's published, which I would bet my life he didn't write or have anything to do with. And he resigns, and nobody's asking any questions. Like, isn't it strange? Right. And then Jill Biden, she says after the election that Nancy Pelosi kicked him out. Now, I didn't know specifically who it was, but clearly some of the people at the heads of the party who were running it made that decision. Now, couple that with the fact that in 2021, Pelosi said on camera, we might need to be prepared to invoke the 25th Amendment if he's not able to continue. So that lines right up with what
She just
what
put it out.
Jill said. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And then Biden, he's wearing MAGA hats and going over to the White House after the election. He's sitting next to Trump, smiling with a bigger smile than Trump has, and he's saying, I would have beat him. It's
Right.
because you picked her
I know.
that she lost.
I know. The whole thing was an unmitigated disaster. And we have ill informed politicians. We have people that are dedicated to not speaking the truth. And that
Yeah.
is I'm pointing it right at the media. And you know
Yes.
who they are. the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, National Public Broadcasting, on and on and on. When you hear the totals, how much positive Trump coverage, how much positive
Right. Right.
Democratic coverage, I mean, it's night and day. 60, 70, 80% of articles on Trump are all negative. Yet the articles on the Biden administration were 60, 70, 80% positive.
Right.
Tell me they're not biased.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. And their biggest audience is to the people that don't watch them much. The people that they have busy, full lives, and they run their news off of 5 and 10 second sound clips and video bites. And I'm really just going to skim the surface like a rock on a pond and not, go really into this. But anybody that was
Elmo,
paying attention,
I
yeah, go
have
ahead.
a relative who lives at least 1,000 miles away from me. And from their lips, I said, how do you stay informed? NPR and CNN and the Washington Post. Exit stage left. I don't even
Right,
want to
right.
have a conversation with this person because I will probably end up wanting to shoot them.
Yeah, it was like different versions of the same
Right.
team.
Yeah.
Of hearing, I mean, just listen, just see what the other side is saying. Even if you consider the other side your enemy, you should want to know what they're
I,
saying.
I will listen to them and
Right.
then I'll give them my side. And we'll see which
Yeah.
one's supported by the facts.
Right. And then when somebody makes a claim that you think is not true, you can go looking for it on your own. I'm speaking to the audience because there are organizations out here and people out here that aren't indebted. They're not in bed with uh, a PAX or a party or anything. And they are dedicated to the truth.
Well,
And
facts
they're,
are inconvenient truths, aren't they?
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
right. Right, right, right. But so here we are now in May of 25, and I thought that we would touch on immigration and the deportation that's been
One
going
of my
on.
favorite topics. I'll tell you, I'm a math guy. So I sat down a couple hours ago. I knew we were going to be talking about this. And I was thinking, how many planes have to be ferrying people out of America to wherever they're going every day to
Yeah,
make a real dent? Now, we've heard the media tell us that 10 million illegals have come in. I think the number is somewhere between 23 and 35 million. Okay. That's my belief based on what I've researched.
and let me
So
ask you about that.
go ahead.
That number is over what span of time would you
Over the
say?
Biden presidency.
Okay,
Because, forever we were told, oh, there were 11 million. Yeah, there were
yeah,
11 million 3 years ago. Okay.
right, right,
So here's my math. You get a big plane, 250 people. You got 40 of them going out of America daily. That's 10,000 illegals deported daily on the plane out of U.S. airspace.
hmm,
Times 30 days a month, that's 300,000 deportations for a month. 12 months, that's 3.6 million a year. You got 4 years of Trump's presidency. That's 14.5 million deportations. That's a pretty darn good start. Now,
yeah,
here's the problem. This is May. It's not
right,
January 1st. We're
right.
already 4 months in. We're behind by 1.2 million already. Okay. You think we're going to see 40 plane loads a day going out? You know the logistics to support that? I think 9 went this week to Mexico.
Wow, is that all?
That's what I said. Okay. Why don't you multiply that by 10?
And so there's some concern of people that are being deported and there being a due process of at least proving their citizenship or their non-citizenship. And, we conservatives we don't want people to be rounded up because they look like a MS-13 gang member or they don't speak a lick of English.
Right.
That's not conclusive
I will give
evidence
them
about
the
somebody
benefit of
being
the
a
doubt,
yeah.
but for someone who already has an order of expulsion from a judge,
Oh yeah.
he's already gotten the due, he's already gotten the process. There's
Yeah.
nothing left other than get his ass on the plane.
Right, right. Yeah. And then, I'm just thinking, I like to, in whatever I do, always try to cover the basics. You never graduate from the basics. And just with the simple things, because most things are simple, not complicated. Do you have an ID? We're not talking about voting. We're just talking about proving that you're a citizen. Because you know what? I was born in America, and every time I apply for a job to prove that I'm not only a citizen, but that I don't have a criminal record. Depending on where it is, they look into it deeper with some things more than others.
Well, in the last 10 years or so, that's become more prevalent than years ago.
Right, right.
Right.
So I don't think it's it's infringing upon anybody's rights to show ID, which to get a driver's license, you got to be a citizen.
I might have mentioned this in our last interview, but I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in Dallas, and this must have been, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago. And I was there for a marketing conference. We were at one of the big, gigantic hotels, and we were going to ballroom A, and I'm in line to get into the ballroom, and I'm looking at ballroom B across the hall, and it's the
Okay.
Texas State Teachers Association or some name similar to that. And they
Right.
had the tables and the ribbons and the people and the labels and everything else. And all these teachers had to show identification to get into a conference of teachers in Texas. They're not voting. They're not
Right.
getting on a plane. They're not getting a mortgage. They're
Right.
not renting an apartment. They're walking into a conference for teachers and they had to show ID. So why
Hmm.
is it racist to ask
Hmm.
for ID? I don't get it.
Yeah, that's just one of several examples of trying to hitch your wagon train to another thing or another movement, which is civil rights or rights of black people, or trying to get a group, get a crowd behind you.
Right.
Because I was saying back, years ago when they were talking about that being racist, I would say, well, we need to stop requiring ID when somebody wants to buy Jack Daniels, or the next time a police officer stops you for a moving violation and he
Right.
asks for your ID, you tell him to kiss your ass. I'm
Yeah.
not
Or to,
showing
or,
you
to,
nothing.
or to get into an R-rated movie when you're a teenager.
Right, right. Which I'm glad to say, here in Atlanta that there's a couple major theaters, megaplexes, which do require that. I've witnessed
That's
it at the box office, and it's also on the website.
same thing if you
So
go to a bar and you look young.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Now, I see. I mean, I'm in my 50s, but I'll be in a grocery store and see signs near checkout saying, "If you look like you're under 40, we're gonna ask you for
I
your
have
ID."
I haven't been carded in a long time.
Yeah, yeah. So that's just propaganda. Just asking people basic things like that, and a social security number. And it's like, listen, if I was an ICE agent, I would say, hey, I am hoping the best for you. You're telling me that you're a citizen. I want you to stay here. If you're a citizen, I want you to stay here. But how old are you? You're 30 years old. Okay, then you must have worked somewhere, so you should have a social security number. I don't think you can. Well, somebody said you can get a social security number without being a citizen. I don't
Well,
understand
that's
what the
very
purpose
common.
would be.
That is
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's so that someone can work, so that along with the rest of your taxes, there's money taken out to go to Social Security, so that in the future, or people that are now turning 65 or retiring, can collect Social Security. It's a
right.
system that's a part of our government.
Yes.
You know, so just if we just the things that take the least amount of time, that are the most basic, we could run through that, and then that'll make the red flags pop up, with just basic everyday stuff. When somebody gets into a car accident at a four-way intersection in the middle of Austin, Texas, and they just get out and start bailing, why do they ever catch those people? Why are they so hard to catch? You never see them again. If I was the guy who got hit, I'd catch him myself. I'd be
No,
on my cell phone going,
I
okay, he's hopping
totally
over a
get.
fence.
Yeah. So, yesterday I was looking at a video, and it was talking about. Have you ever heard of the Villages? It's an area of Florida which is a pre-planned community, and there's
Mhm.
a huge amount of people there, like over 100,000. So there's literally over a dozen distinct communities with like 1,000 homes each. So this is a gigantic pre-planned community
Right.
somewhere near the middle of Florida.
Okay.
And ICE and Homeland Security raided 2 days ago, and they captured 30 illegals that were building homes there. So all these subcontractors were
Oh,
illegals.
right.
So like
Not building for themselves,
30,
but as
and
being
about
hired
two dozen got
as
away.
builder. Yeah.
They don't know how to speak English, but they can hammer a nail. I get it. Okay. Just like if you pass by a Home Depot on the way to work, you would see all the daily workers off to the side of the parking lot hoping to get work for the day.
Right.
Okay. Now it's a red flag because Homeland Security knows about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I heard the testimony of this one guy who was at Home Depot. He said this is a Spanish guy. He said he's been a citizen all his life, and he was just dressed in a polo shirt and jeans. And he is a citizen, and that they mistreated him, or they came very close to arresting him. So at the same time, all of these on a case by case basis have to be followed, and whenever something wrong is implemented, there needs to be justice. Things need to be followed through on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so this is kind of why we have to slow down and be methodical and take our time to make sure that other people don't get washed over and knocked down in the process of going after whoever really needs to be
But
gone
at the
after.
same time, every illegal that is an illegal can't have a court case with the ACLU in front of a judge because you would have court cases for the next 51 years. That can't happen. Okay.
Yes.
So there's a difference, and I'm not an attorney and I don't play one on TV, but there's a difference between due process and getting your day in court. Okay.
Yeah.
I think due process might be in front of an administrative judge, number 32, calling number 32, kind of like at the deli.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
where are you from? What's your native language? When did you come here? Fingerprints, retina
Yeah.
scan, the whole 9 yards. You're from Honduras, for example, and you
Mhm.
came under the fence. We're sending you back. You have no legal right to be here. Okay.
Right, and I had mentioned a little earlier about some people that may only speak Spanish and very little or no English. But I think to get a green card or to become a citizen, that's one of the requirements. You need to understand how the government works. Know that there are three branches, co-equal with the purposes of each. So different logistical things about the country and the government. And I think there's a certain level of English you're required to know
Yeah.
to become an official citizen.
I was reading something on the Heritage website the other day, and I think it was a long quote by, I think it was Teddy Roosevelt. And he was talking about immigration. And the fact is that the only people that we want here are people that truly want to be Americans. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
That learn our customs, that speak our language, and that want to become within the fabric of America.
sure.
Okay. Not in the, Colombian section of the Queens or the El Salvador section of the Bronx, something like that. But, Americans weaved into the fabric of our country.
Right, because that's really what it means. There are many people who they came here as children or young adults. So bring your culture and your heritage and your memory with you. But understand you're coming to a different country where there's a difference. There's a difference between the Puerto Ricans in New York and the Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico. There just is in the
I know
culture.
I had them in my schools. because I
Sure.
grew up in Manhattan on the Lower East Side, and all of my schools, they were literally one third African American, one third Puerto Rican, which was not a bad word. Now we call it Hispanic. Nothing meant by that, and about
Hmm.
one third white. And there
Right.
were just a couple of Asians. There weren't
Hmm.
many. And then, the numbers just started to shift as I got older. I saw more Asians come in, more Hispanics come in, and it was just like a melting pot. And we all
Right.
got along together, and that was fine.
And you know what? Then it becomes like, just taking that one school, for example, the culture becomes a mix where different people or races borrow things from other races with
Yeah, I remember
language
the
and
Chinese
slang.
club, the Spanish club, the French club, the fencing
Mm.
club, the swimming club, the basketball club. There were like 30 different clubs. Okay.
Yeah.
Then again, we had 4,000 kids at my high school.
Oh, wow.
It was one city block at Delancey Street.
Yeah. 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 That's huge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because my high school was 3,300. That was an open school, not limited
Right.
to one district, but where you could live anywhere in the city and
I
go.
think the ninth grade class, there were about 800 people in the ninth grade
Was
class.
it was it a lot of gangs? Because
you
so
know,
many people.
I I have no memory. So we're talking, I was in high school 70, 71, 72, 73.
Oh, wow.
I don't have any memory of gangs. I remember cliques. You
Hmm.
hang out with the cool kids.
Yeah.
Then there's the kids that smoke. Then there's the basketball players, the football players. There were cliques, but there weren't any gangs that I remember.
Maybe after the Warriors came out, people started to get their own jackets, like teams. You know, it's like, yeah, yeah, we're gonna be.
I was in the clique that went for the bagel and coffee across the street.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. Yeah. Well, let's see. Let's see. One
Want to talk
second.
tariffs or some such nonsense?
Yeah, I did wanna mention or touch on that. And I guess I'll just say what my thoughts and feelings have been for the last month is, I understand what tariffs are, as many people do. We learn about it in school. The tariffs that have been implemented this year, I have never seen any to that percentage or on that scale. So we're kind of in uncharted waters in knowing what the result is going to be, to me. Now, sometimes you have an initial negative result right at the beginning, like when you first get a shot at the doctor or you get surgery. There's
I was
pain
thinking the same exact
on the
thing.
first day,
It
but
hurts, and two
then
days later you feel better. Yeah.
right, right. And so, and someone else, some economists had said this also, is in 6 or 7 months we'll know, and time will tell. So, I appreciate criticism from different people.
People want
So,
instant gratification. Hey, it's been
yeah.
24 hours. The tariff didn't work. Well, you're an idiot. So be quiet and wait.
Right. And then, listen, I haven't looked into this, but I also haven't heard any pushback about it from the other side. When at the State of Union, he was just reading some of what were charged by other countries, like with India charging us 3 times as much as we charge them, and China having 100%, tariffs, right?
Or
So,
600% on rice to Japan, I think it was. Canada, dairy, over
yeah, yeah,
100%.
right.
And, there are also non-tariff issues as well. So, for example, for some block of time, we were not able to sell dairy products to the EU. It wasn't a matter of
Hmm,
how high is the tariff. They would not accept beef from North Dakota,
really?
Indiana, Texas, whatever. It was prohibited to come in. So it wasn't a matter of we're going to charge you a
Hmm.
dime. We're not just letting it in at all.
And that was primarily because of additives and preservatives and things that we
Well,
we put in
but
our food.
also they're protecting their own producers,
Yeah. Okay.
which is
Sure.
why, Japan grows rice. There's a lot of rice as a staple in their diet. They
right.
did not want anyone else's rice coming in, which would disrupt their own producers. Okay. So they said no imports at all.
Now, this is how I feel as a capitalist and entrepreneur is that if somebody that is from another planet, they come over and set up across the street from me and they have a better product than I do, then I need to raise my standard.
You need
And
to
I
up
need,
your
I,
game. Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah,
And
well, a
so,
lot of countries don't play that way. They just
yeah,
don't open their markets. So when everyone's
yeah,
saying, it's about tariffs, it's not only about tariffs. You know,
right.
you remember the articles a couple of years ago where China was stealing the intellectual property of Apple, with the design of the iPhones and all that stuff. So they
Yeah,
had to show them the secret sauce, okay, and share the patents or stuff like that, so it wasn't just a percentage tariff, you know.
sure.
Okay.
Sure. The other thing I was going to say is I think the reciprocal tariffs is a good idea
Oh
because
yeah. You charge
then
me 40%, I'll charge you 40%. I
right.
think that's magnificent.
And then the country on the other end, they know that if they bring down to 5%, that we will do it also,
And we
which is
all go
very
to
good for
five and
them.
everyone lives happily ever after. I agree.
It's a great idea, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Why
then
didn't Biden think of that?
well, first you got to be able to think. I mean, with that brain fog and that soup out there, you don't know
Jill could
what's
have told,
going on.
Jill could have told him what to say.
Boy, or you could ask him about that. I wouldn't be surprised if this week you asked his opinion and he babbled for a few seconds that we fixed Medicare.
Well, it's amazing what Trump has done over the last week. If you miss one day's worth of news, I mean, you're totally at the back of the room that you didn't hear stuff. You're not up to date.
Yeah,
So everything he's done in the last 7 days, there's been like nine huge things, all of which Biden could have done,
right.
never did.
Yeah,
Why? Why?
yeah. Well, there's no tip on the end of the spear that's driving something forward. So then you have to have a group to knit things together, and that takes more time. Somebody has to be leading. Somebody has to come up with the ideas. But it was just
So,
just
so let me ask you a question. I'm not sure I have this right, but you remember during the last month of the Biden administration, they had a cabinet meeting. And I remember reading in the paper that it was like only one or two cabinet meetings during his whole administration.
oh wow.
He didn't have cabinet meetings. Meanwhile, Trump has had what, six of them already, and they've all been with reporters in the
Right.
room for a
Communication.
portion of it.
Yeah. Right. Well, they had to hide him because when the leader has a stammering or stuttering or
It's inept.
they're not making sense. Yeah, you got to cover up. It's so much. It's embarrassing.
Well, the whole idea of a cabinet is you put people in a room that are smarter than you are,
Yeah.
and you give them rope, let them
Yeah.
run, okay?
Right.
Because you can't do it all,
Yes.
okay? And let them run. And Biden, I don't know what he did.
Yeah. He's just like an actor. He may have well been putting on a rubber mask and following someone's direction every day.
No different than Chuck Schumer or Jerry Nadler.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Jerry Nadler has a special place in my heart for being a terrible politician. So I grew up in a place called Stuyvesant Town in Midtown Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And right across the street, there was Stuyvesant High School, which was one of the three specialized schools in New York City. There was the Bronx High School of Science, Brooklyn Tech, and Stuyvesant High. And if you got
Mm-hmm.
into one of those three, you were a straight A student. Jerry Nadler, unfortunately, graduated from Stuyvesant High. So I used to like Stuyvesant High, but when I learned that, I don't like Stuyvesant High anymore.
Yeah. I mean, so he obviously got good grades and was a good
Yes, he got
student,
good
but
grades, and he's a
his
terrible politician.
yeah, right, right. His ideals, use for evil,
Yes,
somebody can
unfit
be
politicians, as I call them.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, with the things that Doge has exposed and that have come out I know we're gonna talk about that. Of course, uh, we know that there's pork that's in the taxpayers' money and the things that government uses money for, what they do. The things that I heard about this year, where teaching dance classes in Mozambique and having Afghanistan version of Sesame Street and all this stuff that we're paying for. I know that most Americans didn't know about that. But I didn't know that pork was a thing, because when Biden was in there, they were talking about money allocated for researching a certain kind of turtles that are in India and all these erroneous
Well,
things.
I write about this extensively. I have listed out dozens and dozens of examples where Doge found things that would turn your stomach and your head. And may I give a little commercial, Elmo?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I have a website called EO, short for Equal Opportunity Critic. And on there, you could sign up for my update. I send it out twice a month. It's called Equal Opportunity Times. And what I do is I research what is going on in the country and the world, and I write about it. I give it my slant. And when it comes to Doge, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to tariffs, when it comes to Democratic judges being activists, and
Uh-huh.
putting out national injunctions when a district court, which is the lowest court in the nation, other than traffic court,
Yeah,
doesn't have the authority, they do it anyway. And I write
right.
about all this stuff every 2 weeks. So sign up for free, eocritic.com.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's good to see people writing or put something in print in this day and age. And it's a different kind of thing, and it has a different value than we see so much video and visual stuff. And of course this is video here, but it's something about when you're reading, you're just seeing or focusing more on what's being said. There's no visual distractions.
You raise a very, very good point. Are you familiar with the Daily Wire?
Yes.
Okay. So, one of the first things that I noticed about the Daily Wire that separated it from all other media outlets. So, let's say you wanted to read an article about Trump and tariffs or something. So, you could watch a video about it, you could listen verbally, about it, or you
Sure.
could read the article. So, they gave you three different choices how you wanted to inhale the information, which is great because if
Yes.
you go to a lot of media, all they got is videos. I don't
Yeah.
want a video. I'd like to read an article. Thank you very much. And I like the
Yeah.
fact that they give you the choice. You could read the article.
Yeah, that's good, because a lot of the news stories, it's entertainment with the way that it's presented,
Yes.
and then you're hearing the inflection of someone's voice, and they can have dramatic theme music playing on different parts of what is being said, whereas you're not taking any of that into account when you're just reading information. I like to see when people, they actually kill all the sound around them and turn everything off. I read the Lord of the Rings trilogy on the train going to work in 9 months, read all three books, and it's like 35, 40 minutes each way. And, I mean, it can be noisy on the train, but I wasn't doing anything else. I
You,
wasn't
you,
focusing
you
on
block
anything
it out.
else.
I commend you. So, like me, you're a reader. You've heard of Atlas Shrugged, okay? Ayn Rand, okay? Atlas Shrugged is around 1,238 pages. I read it
Wow.
every December. It
Wow.
is, and I've read it 19 years in a row. It is a tremendous, masterful work, okay, where
Hmm.
she teaches her philosophy, and it's wonderful. So, the trilogy, The Lord of the Rings, you're talking what, 2,000 pages?
Um, close to 1100, you
Okay, I
know.
thought it was more. Okay,
Yeah, with all those together. But I was at the library yesterday inquiring about the Song of Fire and Ice, those books. You know, Game of Thrones, which is
right.
one of the four books. That's really immense. I got to kind of not have too much else going on when I go through, because I don't want to let too much time go by, when I dive into it, so that I can really appreciate it. But that is is an amazing chronicle. And I would have never guessed that George R. R. Martin is from Long Island and not from Europe, or
I
you
used to
know
have girlfriends in Long Island.
yeah.
But one other great resource, do you ever look at American Thinker?
I'm not familiar with that.
AmericanThinker.com. They get together dozens and dozens of different authors or write journalists.
Mhm.
And every day I look at it, there's always something I want to read.
Oh, that's great.
And it is very, very good. I believe it to be more of a conservative outlet, okay,
Yeah.
which is fine with me. But they are very, very good at curating excellent, well written articles that deserve a place in your reading repertoire.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. Good deal.
By the
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
did you ever finish my book?
I'm sorry. Honestly, I have not finished that, but
So,
I
Erasing America, Broken
go ahead.
Politics, Broken Country is yours to read. And I'll even give you a bonus. I'll let you have a free 1 hour consult with the author.
Is that just for me or anyone listening?
No, that's just for you.
Okay. I feel privileged. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. But just on a kind of a different note, I have gone through a divorce and finished that, and that's fairly recent, in the last month or
That's
so.
a big thing to put behind you. That's going to take time and a
Yeah.
lot of soul searching and spirit searching. And I get it.
Yeah.
I
And
get it.
now you know why I live in a different place.
Okay, I get that. I get
Yeah.
that.
So yeah, that's taking up a lot of my time. But
Yeah.
we have to put in the diligence on some things so that it can be behind us.
So here's a
Because
recommendation. My
yeah.
daughter, like me, is a reader, and
Hmm.
she goes to all these different bookstores within like a half hour of her, DeKalb, and all these areas around Atlanta. So you got a lot
Right.
of bookstores, and I'm not talking just Barnes and Noble, okay, but a
Right.
lot of great bookstores that you could probably find treasures there. You know,
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's been two Barnes and Nobles that have closed down. One within the last 6 months, I would say, and
right?
the other was a couple of years ago. And I know why is because there's less people reading, and many of the ones that do, they're using the Kindle,
And they
and
want videos.
yeah. But I mean, guys like you and me, we like the feel of the texture of the cover, the hard cover, and the
And I like
pages.
to highlight the words either
Yeah,
with pen or yellow highlighter.
highlighter.
I dog ear pages.
Yeah.
Um, I'm old school.
So, that's kind of unfortunate. I was, sorry to see that happen. But, the great works and the great writings, they will last. That's what classic work does. It does never get old. It stands out. And
Find some independent bookstores.
right, yeah. And so the smaller ones, I guess what I was leading to, the smaller ones, they're doing better. They're going to be around. They have been around for a long time, and I know what you mean. There's some communities where there's lots of bookstores within a couple of blocks
Right.
of everything they have connected together. So, is there anything else going on? Or
I
anything
wanted to ask
in?
you a question.
Okay.
So, when you imbibe the news, okay, what channels, resources do you look at?
Yeah, so I do a variety of WSB radio, that's in Atlanta, uh, 750 AM, and conservative radio, and podcasts. I it takes time to find people and hosts that you trust. So Red Eye Radio, Dana, what is her name?
Dana
Dana
Patrino?
Lash.
Oh, okay.
Dana Lash, spelled Loesh, I believe. You know, where they report the facts on it, and they would tell you the whole story, even though they put their opinion on it. I like the fact that they say, Yes, I have an opinion, but my opinion is based on facts. And it's not hidden that I am conservative. So I understand that that's not the same as your traditional journalism, or if you watch David Muir on, what is he on? I don't want to get him mixed up. I know Stephanopoulos is on ABC. So I think this is, it may be NBC. But
I just started listening to Brett Baer and
oh,
Sean
yeah,
Hannity, both of which are
really?
on Fox, and they are superb at the details
Hmm.
and uncovering, what is below the surface, and they are well worth listening to because when they explore a topic, they go very, very in depth,
Yeah.
and they're not just swayed by the red or the blue.
Right. I used to listen to Sean Hannity a lot. He's syndicated here. And of course, he had his show on TV.
Yeah, and
He,
he just interviewed the president on Air Force One on the way to Saudi Arabia.
okay. All right. All right. Good deal. Yeah. And Brett Baer, I would say that he's the best of his pack on that
Yes,
channel. Just with a guy who, you remember how Ted Koppel, Peter Jennings,
I
different
grew up with
guys,
him. Yes,
they would report, and it just, you couldn't tell if they had a side,
right.
which side they were on. They were more like the sports commentator who doesn't care who wins, but I'm gonna tell you about different aspects of both sides, and what's going on.
Yeah, I'll give you the play by play, and you figure out if you like him or not.
Right, right. And it's going to be better, and a better result, and it's better for the reporter if they go into it. If that was my occupation, I would have to either stop caring. I would still vote, but I'm saying I would have to get into a state of mind so that I could really not be, I wouldn't want to be affected.
I get it, but all in all, what your listeners or viewers should be doing is getting their information from a variety of sources,
Yeah,
not just their favorite, whether it's TV or YouTube or radio or what or podcasts or whatever, but a variety of them. Okay,
right.
because it's amazing where you could have two or three different media outlets report on the same story and you never know they're talking about the same thing. The slant is unbelievable. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then as far as, many of the old newspaper companies are now online with their websites, and so I read a lot of articles online, and so I will go to the Washington Post and the New York Times and Breitbart and
Breitbart is
Raw
interesting. I started looking at them. Yeah.
Raw Story,
Yeah.
and sometimes you want to see what they have in common.
Yeah.
And then something is standing out, something's mentioned one place is not mentioned in another, then that's something to look into and find
Oh,
out
I,
what's
I
actually
totally
going
get
on
it.
with that.
Well, I want to thank you for your time today. I'll tell your listeners go on to Amazon, which I think is well. There's two bookstores left in the galaxy. There's Amazon and there's Barnes and Noble. Pick up a copy of Erasing America: Broken Politics, Broken Country. I'm sure you'll get a laugh, a giggle, and you'll learn something. Okay, and tell this fella to read it.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Roger.
Okay,
You're great. It's always good
thank
having
you.
you on.
This has been fun, Elmo. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you too. Be safe, and
Okay,
I'll be talking to you again.
okay. Bye bye now.
Bye.